So you're using unmanned aircraft because it's easier and cheaper than manned aircraft, right?
Not necessarily cheaper, because it takes a crew, it takes equipment, it takes backup systems, and we're using it primarily because we can use it for a 10, 15, 20 story building, which may be in a location confined that would never allow, especially since 9/11,
Right.
with new restrictions for flying manned vehicles low, possibilities.
So it's just operational access to an area. You couldn't fly a manned helicopter down 100 feet off the ground next to other buildings without a special permit, I'm sure.
There are places in Florida and elsewhere where we have flown low in manned helicopters without buildings nearby. But in
Right.
general, most manned helicopter pilots don't want to fly below 500 feet, because when they do, it's unsafe if they were to lose power, and they wouldn't be able to auto-rotate in that distance. So generally,
Right.
most pilots like to stay above 500 feet. And also, noise abatement issues are a concern in many cities.
Right.
So that limits you from flying below 1,200 feet, especially in large turbine helicopters. So there's multiple reasons for using remote systems.
Okay, but it's not cheaper than manned helicopters.
No, it's not necessarily cheaper, because it does take a crew, it has its own expenses involved, and we feel that we can get a better image even if we were to bring a manned helicopter in. Sometimes they're not as stable, so
Right.
we can produce what we think is better imagery, especially late sunrise, sunset, and dusk, than we can in a manned system.
Right, excellent. So you start Skypan in '88. You start using unmanned aircraft, helicopters in 96, give or take.
I would say by 98 we were using it for work.
Exclusively?
No, combined with manned.
In combined.
Yeah.
And so tell me about how you saw the progression of the unmanned industry. What's your view of how it's progressed from 96, 98 to 2017, where we are now?
It really started after 9/11, because
Right.
after 9/11, manned helicopters had huge restrictions.
Right.
And that's when we saw an uptick in our aerial view study interest, and began promoting it more heavily. We attended the first Wired Festival out in San Francisco, I think it was in 2004, to display our system and to show what we did to the world, which received a lot of press. And we were developing newer systems because electronics were progressing, and there was just so much ingenuity coming around in the 2000s that we could enjoy and build from.
And up to this point,
Yeah.
what was your biggest struggle as far as using unmanned aircraft, and what was the greatest benefit? Well, I think you went into the benefit, the fact that you could get down to lower levels, and that manned aircraft couldn't get.
Yes. In the beginning, we never anticipated shooting 10, 15-story buildings, but in essence, we've done a lot of projects under 20 stories. We just shot an 8-story project here in Chicago last summer.
Nice.
And those images can be just as valuable as the ones taken on the 40th floor location. Struggle-wise, I would have to say it was continuous equipment issues and problems, and trying to figure out how to manage battery charge and discharge, because lithium polymer batteries are the early ones were dangerous. We've actually had 3 fires while flying, and luckily they all happened during descent, and we were able to put out the fire with an extinguisher that we had on set.
Which you should always have.
Which I recommend always having, because you never know when they'll puff up or begin to fail. So I would say it was equipment, and then it was also dealing with issues for regulations, managing where we could not shoot. Because we were producing work primarily over private properties and not over people or public areas, we felt it was the private property's right to create imagery because they own the air rights over their property. And unfortunately, that wasn't always the interpretation by the federal government.